Welcome to another episode of the PoE Report, a podcast about all things Path of Exile 1 and 2, from myself, Dreamcore, and my co-host, Palstrom. Pal, dude, how you doing?
Good, man. We're currently end of week 2 into the new league. Feels a little bit longer for me, I don't know why, but this league has been lots of ups and downs, and we already had dev interview and everything. We talked a lot about loot in that dev interview with Scissorin. And I think we're just going to jump in right there. Today we got a special guest. We got Ventura to shine a little bit more light on everything. How's it going, man?
It's going good. I mean, I'm happy to be here. I've been having a pretty good time this week, probably better than most. And I've been enjoying it. But again, like, there are loot issues. Everyone talks about them all the time. So why not get into it?
Yeah, let's actually get into it. So we had the patch 3.29.2, and they're kind of addressing, I think the two main things that are being addressed there is the Allflame mechanic and Abyss, which is two of the things that I want to say the reception to Allflame was a bit mixed. People love the crafting, and you go under the ground, it's kind of like there's so many monsters, but they're not dropping anything, right? Most of your loot comes from clicking on boxes down there, and it kind of feels very similar in maps as well with different mechanics. We'll talk about that in a bit. Ventura, how do you feel about these kind of mechanics? Like, I guess Abyss in this league was reworked. In this patch, they're kind of trying to fix it by making rare monsters have a bit more quantity, but I don't know. Like, it feels like the system wasn't really set up for that at all with the way they did the rework. So, how do you feel about that?
I mean, if you're talking about the league mechanics specifically, it feels like all the border modifiers and all the map mods that buff the rare monsters don't really do anything, honestly. Like, you're just fishing for the rare monster drops divines. Everything else is just like cosmetic. And it's also just difficult to read and process. I kind of wish the UI was better. Like, maybe you solve it with icons or something, I'm not sure. But I know when I did it on like early, like day 2, day 3, I just like looked at it and there's just no way I will read all of it and try to play around it. I just ended up scanning for the divine mod. And when I tried to juice rares a little bit in the league mechanic, it just felt like it didn't do enough for the effort. Yeah, the starfish dropped something, but it wasn't anything crazy enough for me to bother. And at that point, I'm better off just juicing in maps or going for the like box rewards and stuff.
I feel like it's really rough also because I personally enjoy the league mechanic a lot. And I don't mind tile loot. I'm somebody who really doesn't mind it, but we're at a critical point now where I feel like the tile versus just monster loot has shifted so hard that every strat just kind of feels a lot less random and a lot more predictable. And you just click on boxes and you pick up scarabs. And also I feel like the leagues where the league mechanic is just printing scarabs are usually the ones where GG doesn't really know what to do with the league reward-wise, which is weird because they kind of knocked it out of the park with the sulfur and with the crafting rewards. So yeah, exactly what Ventura said. The border modifiers are kind of rough, and I don't know. Like you said, the rares are currently not set up for loot, and that's true. You can see, for example, the Bloodline Scarab juicing magic monsters is still possible to some extent. But if you look at, for example, rare monsters and what people are doing right now after the Abyss buffs, which I mean, I don't know. Like what they do is they're farming rares and they have a lot of modifiers, and with how the conversion works, they are now dropping after the buffs, instead of 10 6-links, they're dropping 12 6-links that you're never picking up, right? And they're dropping 500 fusings instead of 400 fusings and whatnot. The problem is really that, as you said, the current system is not really set up to just have a gradual system, kind of like PoE 2 has, for example.
We used to have like a lot better conversions in the past, right? Like where it converted like directly to currency and whatnot. Or I think
you still have, but it's low tier currency now, right? Like they're actually restricting it because people used to get these 50 div explosions, and they didn't want that because I mean that would also be too much, obviously. But they're now holding it down, so you either drop one divine or you drop like I don't know 7,000 jeweler orbs, right?
I do think it got a little better with the last patch because they more or less doubled the amount of wisps you get from Affliction. Yeah. So it did impact the rare loot quite a bit, and I've seen some good results from the propagation stuff. It's not like crazy, but it's definitely like solid profit per hour, and it is hard content that people are asking for. So at least people have like a reason to build towards something, I guess. So it accomplished some stuff, even if it wasn't a perfect patch.
I guess the question... sorry.
Go on, yeah, I was just going to say, I think like the ground loot, tile loot thing is just a really interesting topic at the moment, because it's something that in this patch is definitely, people are annoyed about it in this patch especially, but it's not something that came into the game in this patch. It's just been in the background. It's been creeping up slowly over time. And like last patch done a really good, they basically just masked the whole problem, right, with Mirage. And people were happy with the League because Mirage was just super juicy. But these problems have been creeping up over time. It's actually something that's been happening almost every patch, right? If you look back at, like, for example, King's March, and then we had the shipping rules in King's March. That's just essentially taking loot out of your maps and putting it in this other place where you have to go, and you just get... When I get a divine in the shipping window, that is not very exciting to me. I'd much rather that divine was found from a monster in a map, right? But that's just how it is. Then we have mercenaries in 3.26, which again is the same thing. I can find a divine from a mercenary. It's not as exciting as if I just killed a monster and it randomly dropped. Same thing with Breach. There's the currency tree. Why am I clicking the currency? Why am I clicking currency on the tree and using wound gifts when I could just be getting that currency in my maps, right? These are things that have slowly been stacking up over time, I feel like. And I don't really know. I think they discussed this in the Ziz interview a bit about how they can fix these problems, but they talked about how 330 is going to be the main sort of end game changes and how they want to fix it. But it is kind of interesting to look at because a lot of the most popular mechanics in the game right now are tile loot focused, and it's kind of an interesting position for them to be in, I guess, considering this is like a really popular ARPG and the whole game is built on random loot, right? So, it's a weird one for sure.
I think I'm looking after trying propagation myself for a little bit and seeing how weird the rare loot is. And for everybody who hasn't really seen the loot that I'm talking about, is like if you stack rares really, really hard, you will actually notice that they drop really weird loot. Because they have loot conversions and they drop 20 sixlings and 5,000 jeweler orbs and shit like that. So what I think is they're just going to completely remove that in some way. Because I just don't think it's sustainable. And you can see with magic monsters are very healthy. Their drop rate is still quite low comparatively because they don't have the same multipliers as certain rares have. But magic monsters work. Like, they just work. So I think they're just going to go into a more standardized version of that.
I think in general, like, ground loot from magic monsters feels good. Like, if you farm the diff cards, right, that adds a bunch of magic monsters to the map, and it generally feels good to clear them up. Like, I would say that magic monsters loot is probably in a good spot. We just need the rares to be brought up.
Yeah,
and maybe it is a little unfortunate that a lot of it is based on the Bloodline Scarab as well. So maybe buff magic monsters a little bit and change how Bloodline Scarab works or something. I'm not sure, but I don't think magic monsters are a huge problem, especially if you get Bismuth early on in the map. They can be quite rewarding.
That's definitely a problem. I'm happy you speak about that because the Bloodline Scarab is quite expensive right now. It's 220 chaos or whatever on softcore trade. And what that does is it makes it so magic monsters and Bloodline... magic monsters are balanced around the Bloodline Scarab existing almost. And only the best strat... the Bloodline Scarab is priced around what is the best use case. That is what people are going to buy it for. And then all the other magic strats kind of fall behind because you can see this with a lot of other strats that aren't Breach right now. They can't really use Bloodlines anymore because it's just not worth the money because it doesn't have as much impact as it would have in Breach. So I wonder how they could fix that. They could probably take away some power from that. But the problem with rares, I also feel like is people feel entitled that if they beat extremely hard content, that they drop more loot than somebody who's just clicking on boxes. And that's kind of understandable, right? Ramping up the difficulty. I've done some of these propagated rares, and if they have 50 modifiers, it's insane. Some of them you literally cannot beat. They have literal 40 billion HP with regen and ES and whatnot. And then you're dropping nothing. And even if you made as much as somebody who's just clicking on scarab boxes every day and beating the easiest mobs of all time, it still feels... It feels weird that you don't get more, right? Kinda.
The question I have about these rares is let's say you defeat a rare that has 50 mods pre-wisps in it. What is like a loot that would satisfy you seeing? Like, I feel like unless it drops a divine, people will always be unhappy, right? Or at least that's the vibe I'm getting right now. Like, would you be happy if you drop like a stack of 15 chaos or like 2 annuls? Like, I feel like it kind of needs to drop a divine.
Thing. I think it's like an average thing. I think if you just beat it once and you get nothing, I mean, sure, there's always going to be people who are constantly bitching, right? But they're the kind of people who open a Voidborn Reliquary key and are mad that they don't get anything every time, right? Like those people exist. But for most people, it's like, I just killed 5 of those and got nothing, right? It's not like I killed 1 of those and got nothing. It's like you do it over and over, and it's also frustrating because, like, the loot conversion, once again, it's like you're dropping 56 links, and it's just, why, man? Why? It's just awkward, and it feels like GGG doesn't really. It just feels weird.
The conversion.
I think loot conversion was fun when it was good, like when it was Scarab's big divine explosion. Obviously, it was OP, but it was fun, and you didn't feel punished. Now you just feel punished. Sorry for interrupting, Dreamcore.
No, it's fine. No, I was going to say the same thing. I think the conversion literally feels like you're being punished on your loot. Like when you get a bad conversion, you feel like you've had loot actively taken away from you, that is absolutely not a system that should be in the game, I think, at all. So I think finding a good way to solve this, like, does anyone really want to see like tons of 6-lings? I mean, seeing a 6-ling early on is very nice from a rare, right? Very early on in the game, when you actually get a 6-ling that you can use, especially now with the socket color changes. Sure. But later on, that system has a bit of a problem. So I wonder whether it should be something where when it picks a conversion, it should be able to like sprinkle in other conversions somehow. So that it's not just like, I don't want to see 26 links dropping on the ground when I don't have any use for these 6 things, right? I'm not even going to pick them up. This isn't going to be something that I'm excited to see. So I'm not really sure how they can go about that, but I generally don't think this should be a thing in the game where it's just, just dropping tons of 6-lings. It's just not. You feel like
I feel like they have the winning formula there, though, because they have effects like cannot drop equipment, right? Like, we know what happens from an Allflame or from the border modifier, for the implicit from the link mechanic, what happens if no equipment can drop, for example. They could do that and apply it to certain rares, and those rares will then drop Scarabs and Divines, and then the other rares will drop more normal loot, right? So you could have something in the middle where you're not going to explode into 50 Divines, but you're going to drop, like, 15 Scarabs and, like, maybe a Divine and, like, 20 Chaos, right? Stuff like that. That could be a good start. Yeah,
it's definitely a weird system for sure. I wonder if that's something that they'd address in 3.30. I mean, they talked about how they want to kind of shake up the end game quite a bit. The Scarabs was one thing that they touched on there. They said that, people have been using the same Scarab now for years pretty much, and they want to kind of address Scarabs a little bit. I guess we're also going to see some other changes as well, but yeah. One strategy that... Go on.
No, sorry, I just wanted to throw in, because obviously I'm not just critiquing GG, because like we have to also understand that they have to balance this with everything else in the game. For example, if they make content too hard, now all of a sudden there's 2 viable builds. We're in the Trickster meta again, right? Everybody's playing Trickster with EE. And at the same time, they can also not make it so tie loot is completely worthless. So they have like a million things to think about there. So it's not like it's an easy solution. That's not what I'm saying. Just to make that clear. It's like they made a complex game, and every solution is a complex solution.
I think the issue is that people... Like, we had good ground loot in the last 5 leagues, pretty much. Maybe except Breach League. Breach League was kind of whatever, but outside of that, it's like Affliction, super good ground loot. Necropolis, insane ground loot. Settlers were like okay. Mercs were really good, and Mirage felt good. And I don't think tile loot was bad in those leagues at all. Like, no one really had a big issues with tile loot being bad when ground loot was also good. It's just the imbalance that is currently created by the lack of good ground loot strats that causes this like unhappiness in people, if that makes sense. At least that's the feeling I've been getting.
Yeah. Speaking of tile loot, there, you've actually been doing a strategy venture involving mercenary farming, like a tier 0 unique strategy, which I think was pretty interesting, actually. Can you talk us through how you're getting on with that strat and how you're finding it?
Okay, so there are 2 Merc strats, right? One, which is super easy. You literally just put in the infamous scarab and I think it's called Renown, where all Merc gear is unique. And you just rush them up in 20 seconds. You find the Mercs. They're super easy to kill. There was a bug where you kind of had to play a dot build to fully benefit from it, which was kind of unfortunate. But thankfully, I was playing Fizz dot, so it wasn't an issue for me. And you just kill the Mercs, get pretty good loot, and leave. I would say that you average like tier 0 every 6 to 8 hours, somewhere in that range. So probably the best strat for uniques. Not sure. And then they also added Kadira and Gambling District, right, to the game with the Anomalies, and those are another really good source, and you get a lot of them if you are doing 20-second maps. So that strat was pretty good, and you didn't really need a strong character for it, and it was very rewarding. I understand why people would have an issue with that strat, just like looking at the results of it versus the difficulty of it. Plus, it wasn't just uniques. Obviously, Mercs dropped like pure divines in their rucksack, and this I feel like is the most important part. It's like the best source of rare scarabs. Like after a day of farming, I ended with like 20 plus of each of like Bloodlines, Pandemonium, Risk, like all the scarabs you never see drop. The Mercs actually do have them in their rucksack. And then there is the other Merc strat that I actually think is a lot better, which is, or like not necessarily a lot better in terms of rewards, but in terms of balance. It's the one that is combined with Rogue Exiles, and it spawns wild Mercs in the map. That one is actually quite difficult. Those Mercs are, especially if you proc Rakas, harder than Ubers. And they also drop the loot the same way the Mercs you would encounter normally do, but they just run around in the wild. And I would say that strat is probably like 1 tier 0 every 4 or 5 hours. It's pretty insane, but you need a strong character for it. And ultimately, the main issue I have with the strat is that you can run white maps. I think that's like what most of the issues boil down to. The way I would change it is not necessarily nerf the scarabs or nerf Mercs directly, but force people to run rare maps and make the rarity apply to the gear they have, like the tier of the uniques, and quantity to what they have in the rucksack or something along those lines, just to make it a bit more difficult and a bit more gear dependent. Because right now, I feel like the risk-reward ratio is not there correctly. But it is very fun, and it is a new farm that's like actually fun to engage with.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. I remember you distinctly coming into my stream on like day 3 in the morning, and I just woke up and I'm clicking on scarab boxes, and you just come in and you're like, I'm like, how you doing, man? And you're like, well, I have a headhunter and a mage blood. I just dropped them. I'm like, what?
It was pretty fun. Like,
that's insane.
I had like 3 days in a row where I dropped a bell, and like it feels good, right? Like, let's be real, it feels good, but
yeah,
it is clearly too much for doing Alk and Go or like Scour and Go maps that you can do on 20 different gear.
It's the only thing I was gonna interject is I'm sure you heard this in the interview, but the Anomalies, so the Gambling District and Piranhas actually does scale off of Quant. So that's the only thing where alking your map actually does something, at least according to
they said it's part of it, right? So I assume it kind of works like Conquerors, where maybe you get like 20% of Quant or something. Yeah. What I think they should do is, you know how destructive play works? Yeah. I think that's what they should do for Anomalies, where if you clear the entire map, you have the full chance, or maybe even higher than it is now. Oh. And if you just boss rush, it's like 1/3 of it. I think that would solve a lot of the issues. Because right now, when I think about SSF, I'm like, oh, I'm just going to boss rush City Square for like 3 days straight and I hope I get my Mage Blood. Which is just like, that's probably not how it should be, right?
I know I'm kind of like sidetracking the Merc discussion. I'm sorry for that. But I think people are memeing on the Gambler Strongbox and Piranhas. It's unironically good.
Yeah, they are.
Like they're unironically good. And it doesn't even cost that much gold.
Even on other regions, I think the Anomalies are quite good. Yeah, I think it's one of those things that you are genuinely excited to see. So I think they did a pretty good job with them. Yeah, I hope they don't like over nerf them. If anything, like make them maybe a little rarer if you feel like they're too strong. But it would be a shame if it goes to the same way like Nameless Seer did in the past, where it's just like, well, I see a Nameless Seer, he's not going to have anything. This way, I still get excited when I proc an Anomaly every time, whether it's Gambler or Kadira.
Like my average on the Gambler Strongbox, and that was so what I do is I gamble 4 times, and then the last one I lockpick. and it almost never happens. But okay, so because the last one is like 2 million, and I would rather just run more maps, and it's fine, right? My average has been so far like 1.8 divines from them, and I haven't had any jackpot drops. That's like 6 divs here, 4 divs there. So it's actually pretty impressive. That's like an extra, let's say 2 div every 20 maps or so. That's pretty damn good, right?
Yeah, I don't know if it's every 20 maps, but I give it the average. It's probably like 2-3 div average.
Yeah.
Well, I'm doing Alk maps, so it might be.
I was going to say, I've heard a lot of different things when it comes to that, because I guess it depends on how much the quant actually does affect the completion, right? Because for some people, I've heard them saying like every 10 maps, and I'm like, there's no way. But then I guess if they're running like super juice maps, we don't know what the calculation.
They're running
is,
8
right?
mods.
So,
maybe they're throwing in their shitty 8 mods, like the bricked 8 mods or whatever they have, right? Like maybe.
Yeah. I wanted to go back to something Ventura said there, which is about the whole like risk reward thing to do with Mercs, because I actually think it's really interesting that you said how, you know, the strategy you're doing at the moment, you're doing scoured maps, which makes sense because it's not scalable. But the idea of like adding mods and then having the mercenary scale is, I think it's a real slippery slope for GGG, because it's like right now they're already struggling to balance the Mercs, and Mercs are in this really weird spot where it feels like they either deal way too much damage or they don't do anything to you, right? Like you basically just kill them very quickly, and sometimes that's fine. Sometimes they just one-shot you. They're doing so much damage. I know that they're doing some changes. I think they did some changes in 3.29.2 for some of the outlier ones. But the idea of like adding some like bad damage modifiers to Mercs on top of how their skills are already scaling is I don't know if that's like I like where you're coming from with the scaling of Mercs, because I do think generally speaking most rewards in the game should be scaling that way. Like you shouldn't feel like I just want to run scoured maps because there's no, like, obviously there's some mechanics like essence and things like that, but yeah, the mercenary thing is interesting. I think they really do need to get mercenaries in a good place before that's a thing, because it would be, they're going to be really scary with some mods.
They actually adjusted a lot of the problematic spells. Like after running like thousands of maps now, I got a pretty good idea on what's rippy, and they adjusted pretty much all of it. There's a few things they haven't adjusted, which are like minion specific, kinda. Of course, I'm not playing a minion build, right? But I'm running around with 28 golems. And if one of my golems die and it just obliterates and kills all the other golems, and then they obliterate and kill me, there's kind of no solution to that, but it's fine. Like, it's just PoE, right, at that point.
Yeah. I think the way to balance it as well is just, make the baseline a lot lower than it is right now, because there's no way you should be dying in a white map if you have a well set up character IMO, because you're choosing not to do hard content. There's no way you should be dying to a Merc in a white map. There just shouldn't be. So they can set that baseline, and then like you said, then you have space for 2 damage mods, and now they're like really scary.
Yeah, I just have bad memories from Mercenaries League with those getting randomly one shot by different Mercs. But yeah, I think there's definitely a place where they could get the balance correct on that. One of the other things I wanted to discuss in this podcast here, I guess, is just generally speaking, like they reworked Abyss in this patch. How do you guys feel about how they reworked Abyss with the chest? Because obviously Abyss used to be this thing where you could get tons of loot from the monsters. Like, just think about the strategies in Affliction, for example. They were all centered around Abyss pretty much. Now it feels like it's gone the complete opposite way, and the loot is focused on the chest and the monsters don't really drop anything. We'll go to you first, Ventura. What do you feel about the Abyss rework? What do you think Abyss needs in PoE 1 for it to actually be a mechanic that people want to interact with?
Well, I want to say that like this patch that dropped this morning actually did buff the rares. I'm not sure how much it did, right? But they are trying to address the loot a little bit. But what I think Abyss really needs is some unique reward that I actually care about. Abyss jewels are really not it, honestly. Like, most bots don't really care about them. They don't have that much value. Unique jewels can have some value depending on the meta, but like in PoE 2, it has like omens, right? Like some crafting material. Maybe it needs something like that in PoE 1, I'm not sure. But doing Abyss itself actually feels good this patch. I think most people like it. There's some issue with like where the mobs don't explode properly. It's kind of like old Harbinger. But in general, like, it doesn't feel bad to do Abyss. It's just the loot that feels bad of it, I would say. And the chests, I don't have an issue with. They actually feel pretty good to open. You get a Divine every, I don't know, 20, 25, like, grants a chest. It's okay. It's nothing crazy, but it's not bad.
I will say, beyond the ground loot that we already talked about, right, at the start, Abyss, I exactly feel Ventura there with the Abyss jewels. The problem with Abyss jewels is they're kind of outdated in a lot of ways. The way the game's set up right now, the jewel sockets are so competitive with unique jewels being so strong right now, especially on softcore. And there's almost never a build where I just put in a Abyss jewel. It's maybe like I need phasing on kill, and it's like, okay, I'll throw in one. But unless you're actually a Abyss jewel stacker, it just doesn't really make much sense. And the bigger problem even is that getting good Abyss jewels is almost impossible. Like getting a 4 tier 1 Abyss jewel, but 4 mods you want is almost impossible if you want flat damage, for example, because a lot of their mods are tiered. I don't know if you guys have ever tried crafting one. It is like you start with a fracture, otherwise you have no chance, and then it's still a shit show. So
it's a little better with the boat, but yeah, I agree. It's quite hard to craft a good one.
And then on top of that, you have Stygian Vices, which is supposed to be a reward, which, I mean, is a mid-tier belt because you're going to transition into one of the big belts, right? So it's an issue. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I really like what they did with the Abyss Jewels. I think the Abyss Jewels are really exciting and cool loot. We just don't really see them often enough. And I have no idea why they decided to sprinkle out the Abyss Jewels in like Delve and whatnot. I think they could have all reined that into Abyss, most likely. Make it a little bit more interesting. Maybe make different bosses for the different jewels. I don't know.
I don't mind it being in Delve, honestly. Like specifically the Delve boss that you need for the Abyss Jewel was kind of not worth doing in the past. So they gave it, like, it is Abyss team. It is a reward that you want to do it now. I feel like there's no issue with buffing Delve, but I do think that Abyss needs something extra on top compared to what it is now.
Yeah. It's definitely, like, for me, PoE 2 Abyss definitely feels better than PoE 1 Abyss right now. Even if, and just so we're clear, we just all woke up to the patch. So, or, yeah.
I have done quite a bit of Abyss this patch. Most of it was before it got buffed, even the first time. One thing I will say is that you have the chance to drop, like, the 5 mod corrupted Abyss Jewels. This is just, the chance of you getting a good one is just so low. I just chucked them all in the sale tab, and I think I sold like 2 of them out of a ridiculous amount, right? I was even like lowering the price of them over time, but it just doesn't. They just.
It actually doesn't work anymore because of the do cut. What you now do is you get a 4 stat that's like decent, and then you do cut, and you get only 5 instead of 6 potentially. But let's be real, the 6 mods are never 6 good mods. It's literally a 1 in a million, and this way you can actually guarantee a 5th good one because you have 4 chances.
Yeah,
I made like
even at 5 mods, like, am I using an Abyss Jewel over like a unique jewel or a rare jewel? Like, it's really hard to justify. Like, what is my rare jewel on my build right now? It's like live block and 2 max stress or something like that, or like it's like double dot multi. It's really hard to beat something like that. Like, rare jewels are very strong, and even those have a hard time to be used over like unique jewels, right? Like, unique jewels are so powerful in this game.
And maybe it's also a crit multi issue, because every build I play, I get carried on my crit multi from normal jewels. I have like triple crit multi life, and I can never replace that for an Abyss jewel. Like, what am I going to get? Fucking flat damage? Like, most builds already have flat damage cheesed or figured out somewhere, right? So it's like,
I know it's good on like minions. Minions are like the flat damage a lot. And then if you are doing some kind of something that has like actual 0 base damage, right? Like, I remember in the past we did like Brightbeak or like Replica Frostbreath or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, there's some ways of doing it, but it's pretty rare that I use the flat.
But those builds would either have a way to cheese that, otherwise the build wouldn't make any sense, or they would be an Abyss stacker, in which case, sure, yeah.
Yeah. They even nerfed some of the modifiers, right, in this patch. Like, they nerfed like mana from Abyss Jewels. It went from 40 to 36 or something on tier 1.
Which was probably a good thing in hindsight, actually. I've popped a lot of mana stackers, and that new helmet gives you, even with the nerf values, it gives you as much mana as a replica Chaos, just FYI. It gives you 470 mana with the nerf value, so it was probably a good idea. Yeah.
I mean, also like let's say Archmage, right? It has so much increase that was actually one build that does use Abyss Jewels, where the flat mana is a lot more valuable than like increased mana on normal rare jewel.
I wonder if that's
especially
true now, though,
creatures, right?
because I wonder if that's still true after they nerfed the what's it called again? After they nerfed the amulet, the Foulborn Choir of the Storm. I wonder if that's still true, because now it's barely worth stacking Lightning Wrist anymore. But yeah, it's pretty damn close, if anything.
Yeah, I haven't really seen people play Archmage's League, honestly.
With
Yeah,
the
it's
Abyss
Frostmage.
Jewels, I wonder if with the Abyss Jewels, because I know that in the Ziz interview they actually discussed how they weren't too happy with Light Radius on mercenary builds, where it's like that the only way to scale it feels like it's with uniques, and Abyss Jewels is kind of the same thing. It's like those builds, if you're using a lot of Abyss Jewels, you are shoehorned into a bunch of using these very specific uniques. So I wonder if that's something that they'll look into trying to improve, because Abyss, like you guys touched on it there, like the feeling of the mechanic, it's actually so much better. It's a huge improvement. Like the actual gameplay, it's amazing. Like it plays really well. And initially I was thinking, is this going to translate over from PoE2? But it has. It's really good. But the loot's just not there at the moment. And yeah, I think it does need exclusive rewards for sure.
This is also an issue because people are talking about exclusive rewards, but I'm really disappointed with the main drop pool in PoE. For example, I think the best thing they ever did was like remove Harbinger. Sorry for everybody who likes Harbinger. I just mean what it does for the ground loot, and introduce Ancient Orbs and Fracturing Orbs into the ground loot. Now, we could talk about Fracturing Orbs are too rare right now because they did something there, that's for sure. But more general loot that is exciting is a good thing, and that's what I think PoE2 also does good, and that's what I think contributes to PoE2 feeling good in terms of loot, with like their perfect and greater currencies and whatnot, and just omens. And I mean, I'm gonna say this, I'm a broken record at this point, but I would love if they took something like Bestiary and just took the best crafts and itemized them and threw them in the main drop pool and made them actually accessible. Did that with more mechanics, it would make the game less bloaty, and would probably make normal loot more exciting as well.
I actually really like the suggestion that Andrew actually threw out in the interview, where like they could make Syncplex or Focus like part of the core pool. I was thinking, why did they make Talismans be specific? Those could have been in the core pool. Stuff like +1 Spectre Chest and other Delve modes could be in the drop pool. Incursion modes could be. Obviously, you would have to replace it with something in their specific mechanics. But I do think we need more like cool stuff on the ground. I agree with that for sure. And I do think there's like stuff to take from. It's just you would have to actually commit to it and then ideally replace it in their specific mechanic where you took it from.
Yeah, I would have really liked to see the Volatile Valorb in the core drop pool rather than in Sanctum, because that, to me, that feels like this is something that you're going to be really excited to see. Like, even in SSF, if you see this, like, doesn't matter about the value, right? You're excited to see it because most builds you're going to be able to use a unique, maybe in your second build or something like that, you can build around something. And the fun of using that item it's just great. Like, it's a really fun item to actually make use of. To actually click it on an item is exciting, right? So anytime they have currencies like that, I think hiding it in Sanctum is an interesting choice for sure. That's definitely not what I expected them to do with that. It could be. Okay, so I guess one thing we can just mention is that they did say that Mirage is coming into the game in 3.30. So maybe we've actually seen this just in this patch, right? They re-added Mercenaries to the core game, and they took all of those, like, unique rewards from Mercenaries and put them back on them, like the Azadi Crest Shield, right? That was in the core drop pool, and now it's gone back exclusively onto Mercs. So maybe if they bring Mirage and fold it into the core game in 3.30, the Volatile Valorb is going to go back onto Mirage, and then we'll actually be able to see it again in maps.
It could be both maps and Sanctum. I don't think anyone would have issue with that. It's just it being exclusively Sanctum rubs people the wrong way, especially when we have Beyond. Like, it could just drop from Beyond, right? Same with like Delirium Folk. Like, why can't we, or whatever they were, Refraction thingy.
Yeah.
Like, why can't it just drop from a random Delirium? It doesn't need to be Mirage Delirium, but I understand that if they plan to bring Mirage Core and they still want to have Mirage-specific rewards. But it just feels like they were really easy rewards to add to the game without, like, not breaking the game. We already know what it did, right? And it's good, but it wasn't, like, game-breaking.
Probably their thought process was, oh, we just introduced Pact and the Pact belt, and they also dropped from Beyond, so maybe it's a little bit too much focused on just Beyond, and then they looked at Sanctum and they were like, maybe they need something. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. Generally speaking, the loot pool in PoE 1 could do with some extra things to be excited about, I think. And some of those like rarer tier currencies like Volatile Valor would be really cool because you'd be super excited to see it every time, I think. So in this patch we had the spellcasting changes. This was kind of interesting before the patch actually went live because, you know, the buffs got announced in the patch notes. People were a bit sort of underwhelmed, I would say, generally speaking. And then there's some spells that actually kind of looked really good before we went into the patch. I know, Ventura, you've been playing Fizdort, I believe, and Fizdort was already quite good, and now it's even better. Talk us through like how you're getting on with Fizdort, and how do you feel, just generally speaking, about the spell?
I was gonna play Fizdort before they announced any dot buffs. I actually didn't expect them to buff Fizdort. I thought it was just gonna be Cold Dot and Chaos Dot. So when I saw Fizdort buffs, it just confirmed my starter selection, right? But realistically, as much as the build is really good, it is one of those things where, yeah, it is strong and it's like Elementalist explosions and explosions chaining and whatnot, but it's all held together by Primordial Bond. The second you remove it, the entire build kind of falls apart, or you have to build it completely differently and sacrifice other things. And I think some of the other dot builds, especially like Cold Dot and whatnot, are also kind of held together by Elementalist just being a really strong ascendancy, right? So we'll see how it will feel if GGG ever adjusts that. Otherwise, I would say that most of the spells where they did more changes than just like the basic blanket change actually looked pretty good. Like Windroar, Lightning Tendrils, like all the dot stuff looks like okay. And then the spells where they did very little, like Arc, that will just never be enough. They made it like cast like 15% faster or whatever. That is just never going to be enough in the current state of the game. But I do think one thing I was wrong on is I thought the packs will feel a lot worse to use. At least because I equipped it kind of late when my character was already good. I didn't really notice the debuffs. Like I pressed the pact and I don't know what debuff I have. So it feels like it's completely fine to use them. At least if you only use one. So I don't know. So, the pact felt better than I expected.
Yeah, so you're kind of going at it from a dot perspective as well. So from a hit-based perspective, or just in general, like as you said, Arc, for example, like a normie caster perspective, the one thing I dislike about these sort of casters right now is how reliant they are on intensity in terms of damage. If you've done caster pobs right now, the difference between a skill being able to use intensity with overwhelming intensify and intensity, I always get it mixed up. Getting to use that package and not getting to use that package, we're talking like a fourth of the damage. Because you get so much base crit from overwhelming intensity, and all those skills that start at 6 base crit and that shoot up to 12 because of the support, and you get crit multi, it's just ridiculous, right? And so that's, for example, an Arc problem, where it doesn't have an AoE tag and it doesn't have a projectile tag, so it can't use intensity support or pinpoint support. So immediately, we're talking you deal 25% of everybody else's damage, right? And just not even speaking about the numbers and whatnot that are problem with it, but that I really didn't like. I would have loved for them to nerf overwhelming intensity specifically and give spells baseline more damage. But I don't think they realized that, because overwhelming intensity came out in 3.27 and it was actually pretty under the radar with Nadir mode and everything for a while because nobody was really self-casting. So that was probably the issue. But in general, I would have liked for them to bring that up a little bit, maybe nerf intensity a little bit. Otherwise, I feel like Dot, I feel a little bit... I was wrong on Fizz for sure. I didn't understand that it was already pretty damn good. I thought it was okay, but it was already pretty good, and now it seems to be like approaching S tier, maybe already S tier. In terms of Chaos, the Cold Dot is kind of in the middle and whatever, but Chaos Dot and Fire Dot, I guess the RF builds got good single target now. They actually have decent single target now with the totems. Chaos Dot, I just don't really know what to do with because their numbers just kind of feel off. And other than Wither, they don't really have like a punch, right? Like they don't really have a this is why you go Chaos Dot.
How much good to play it a little bit. In SC Trade, like obviously you can make a lot of things work, and it looked fine, but it wasn't like, oh, I have to play this fine. It was just like, yeah, if you want to play Chaos Dot, you can make it work now. Definitely can feel the buffs, especially if you combine it with packs and whatnot, but it's not like it's suddenly OP, right? It's just like, yeah, it feels better now.
Yeah, and it also depends on what content you do, because like right now, if you're not doing Breach or Abyss or some of the Merc stuff, if you have 3 million damage, you can do almost any content, right? Like it's only about how cozy is it, how fast you are. For example, I was actually contemplating, I was making a Death's Oath POB the other day, and with the buffs, you can actually get it to like 6 million damage and have good move speed, and you just run around. I was thinking, well, that's fine for if I want to deep dive, for example. Right, I don't need anything else. So I guess we're also putting a lot of strain on our builds, because if you do Abyss propagation, you all of a sudden need 100 million damage, and Defiance of Destiny, otherwise you get like one shot by a million attack speed mobs. But yeah,
the fire dot changes are definitely interesting. That one I played at the start of this patch with the Searing Bond, Scorching Ray, of Immolation Totems. That one is kind of strange because it was already good last patch, and people were just kind of getting onto it there because we had the Gauntlet and people were already using it there. And I think people would have put it into the RF build anyway, even without the buffs, because it's already, like, once you actually have it set up, it's already quite a bit more damage than Fire Trap, and it got better in this patch. That is an interesting... I don't want to say it's a problem, but there's definitely a strange thing going on there where, like, I don't see any build where you would want to self-cast that spell. Because it's mechanically, it's just completely superior on totems. And I even, like, looked at this for self-casting at the start of this patch, because initially my plan was to just self-cast that skill and then transition into totems later on. But it basically, even if I had the skill, I think I would probably just play Fire Trap anyway, because Fire Trap's just better early on, and then you can switch over to the totems once you have the shield. And the damage boost is ridiculous once you have the totem set up. Like, it is actually absurd. Compared to single target, it's like 4 times the damage or something.
I mean, it's because most of the damage comes from the first stack, right? So you can just spam totem.
Exactly, yeah.
As self-cast, you can't really abuse that in any way, so it makes sense that totems are a lot better.
Yeah.
I mean, probably should just change it so it works the other way around, where, like, most of the damage comes at the end, like when you have more stacks or something. I'm not sure how you would change it or balance it. Or, like, maybe make a different transfig version that works better with self-cast instead. I don't know. There's definitely, like, room. But I was very surprised they buffed that skill, especially after seeing it in Gauntlet. And it already was, like, the highest DPS build in Gauntlet with Hyro Scorching Ray totems. So, like, seeing them buff it by, like, 50% was kind of wild. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, sure. Just put it on an RF Chieftain.
Yeah.
The thing with like totem mechanics and whatnot is also that on PoB, what you see is, for example, people always say like the Stormburst stuff. It's like Stormburst self-cast. Why do people go like totems? And it's like on paper, yes, they're kind of equal, and sometimes self-cast is better, but totems perfectly casted, right? They perfectly release. They die and they insta release. It's perfect. And as a human, if you have to put the inputs, you're not going to get what you have in PoB. Because it's always delayed with the channels and release. It's kind of like with back in the day with what's it called, Blade Flurry, when Blade Flurry was played, and everybody always said my damage does not line up with what I see on PoB, and it's like, yeah, that's because you take 0.3 seconds in between like releases and whatnot, right? Like reaction time. So the same thing goes for totems in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, it helps that this one is like just you spam totems and you abuse the fact that the first. Stack does more damage, but I think Stormburst of Repulsion works similar way or something. Not the normal Stormburst, but the Repulsion one is like
you have
like
to
that, where you spam
them,
as well. So it's very similar to that. Very similar in power too. Like both of those totems in general feel pretty strong nowadays. Like actually, that's probably the wrong way to put it. Certain skills feel really strong on totems nowadays.
Totems themselves are actually like really weak. Like spell totem for a normal skill right now, Arc for example, or something, or Spark. A totem skill with the opportunity cost of -1 support, and now with 50% less damage and 40% less cost speed, you have to get to 5 totems to even break even on damage. Which, getting to 5 totems is a crazy opportunity cost, right? So, other than comfiness, you're not getting anything right now on a normal spell. You have to have a reason to play totems, which I think is a fine balancing. It's fine, a fine way to balance. Ballistas are different because they already start with 3, but yeah.
Yeah. One of the other things that we just touched on a little bit is the Pact Skills, which were added in this patch. They're kind of like spell casting war cries, almost, but they also have carry this downside. Ventura, you touched on it there to say that you're kind of pleasantly surprised, I guess, with how they actually performed. And one of the things that you were mentioning there is Arc, and I do want to mention that Arc, not the normal skill, but Val Arc especially, is massively buffed by the Pact Skills. Actually, from like an Ignite perspective, is kind of crazy. I haven't actually seen many people playing that, but that is such a huge buff with the Val Pact skill there. So can you like discuss a little bit your experience with packs? Like how have you? I guess the interesting thing is like the downsides. Some of them are really, really impactful. Some of them are not so impactful. You also have the belt, which can give you buffs instead of afflictions. How have you found them?
So I've seen people do the trigger one with like triple different pack and playing the belt. That actually looks really good. Like if the belt is cheap, let's say 15 divines, it is a pretty good alternative to like Magebot and Headhunter, at least early on in the league. You do get, I think it's kept at 5 buffs, but I mean, even 5 buffs is like pretty decent. And then I do agree with you that the one thing about packs that could explore the least is the Val skills. I think those have a lot of potential. And there's a lot of Val skills that are really strong. And we have seen it in the past where Val skills became meta and like you basically ended up just spamming them. And that is what the Val Pact can enable. I saw Jung do it on like Cold Out, like Val Cold Snap, but you can do it on hit-based skills, you can do it on Ignite skills, you can do it on a lot. So I do expect a bunch of those to pop up with specifically the Val one. There is the one that gives you like extra projectile. That one is a little finicky. It feels like you have to use it with something that like shotguns, basically, like Creeping Frost type of style or something along those lines. And then the dot pack is just good. Like it's 60% more damage for pressing one button. Like how much more do you want, right? And then I know people complain about the downsides, but Ender said it himself in the interview. It's like if the downsides don't exist, the upside would also be lower. So there's kind of no reason to complain. It's like whatever, we just have to deal with the downsides because like the alternative is that the upside is not going to be as good. So maybe we should be happy that they have downsides in a way.
I haven't actually gotten to play with them, so I don't have too much of an opinion there. But I will say the downsides. The thing I dislike is that they're random, and you don't really like know what you get at the time. And my solution was going to be, for example, what if pacts were like, because they drop pretty often, right? Like they're not really chase items. What if they dropped with 1 or 2 specific downsides, and you could like roll for like not roll for a good one, but like get the one that doesn't affect your build too much, and it's like a chase item kind of deal.
I like that. It would just give more drops to Beyond, right? More cool drops to Beyond.
Yeah.
I'm kind of down with that. Like, let's say you drop a pack of gore and it has like this pack causes these 3 afflictions on like randomly between the 3. Yeah, I mean, honestly, would be a pretty cool idea.
That is
would be a cool idea with the belt too, right? Because if you turn it into buffs, you can build like around it too.
Yeah.
That would be an interesting idea for sure. I think that the downsides are like you said, they're random there, but some of them are just so impactful, and some of them not so much. Like the increased damage taken one is just.
I love how Andrew said that they're not that bad because they're additive. Yeah, and then I was thinking about increased damage taken. It's like, well, technically he's right.
Yeah, he's not wrong. Yeah, exactly. But it's such a rare stat, right? So
I think what he meant is like, you know, like reduced defenses doesn't matter too much, or like reduced damage. But obviously there's like reduced resistance, which like if you are not overcapped is an insane downside.
You don't have to.
Increased damage taken, obviously an insane, that is pretty much more damage
reduced
taken.
action speed. Yep.
I don't know if that one actually made it to the game, or at least I haven't felt it. I'm not sure. I know the reduced move speed is there, but I didn't really notice the action speed. Maybe it's rare. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really cast the pact often. I cast it like once a month, and I don't always check what I get.
Yeah. So obviously that was in the interview. They kind of talked about how that was like a solving the end game type thing. One thing that I want to discuss is in particular, like league starters. I know, Ventro, you do tons of testing on league starters when it comes to getting towards the the beginning of a league. And I wanted to kind of get your impression of how these spellcasting changes, now that we've actually had a patch to play with them, how you think it's going to impact the next league. So, patch 330, whenever it comes around. How do you feel like the spellcasting changes are going to interact with, how people decide to level characters, or what starter builds we might see in that patch?
I think all the dot builds are going to be good for Atlas progression, pretty much. Like, actually, Ignite as well. I was going to say maybe not Ignite, but I think Ignite as well. Like, they buffed Hexblast enough that you can play Ignite Hexblast and like use like Walk on top, and it feels good. And then obviously Cold Dot feels really good for Atlas progression. Fizz Dot, without Blade Span, and it's like a little rough because your cast speed is usually low. But you can build around it and it's definitely way better than it used to be. And then Chaos Dot is also fine for Atlas progression. And even Self-Cast Spell, I think most of them are fine all the way until like tier 11s, tier 14s. And then once you get to the tier 16s, if you don't start like upgrading your gear to trade, you start feeling spells fall off a little bit. That is one thing that I kind of hope they addressed, but they didn't, is the mid game of spells. Because I think the end game is fine with the like all the exceptional gems and with packs and whatnot. I think there is solution to end game spellcasting, but I think mid game spellcasting is still in a kind of like weakish spot. Except obviously, again, the skills that got buffed a lot, like Tendrils, Winter Orb, like all the stuff that got buffed by more than just like the like mandated 25% or whatever they were doing to most skills.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to testing some stuff. I think that Luminary, I think Luminary will be stronger and stronger every patch because of knowledge gaps, not because anything's going to happen to the archetype. I think people are going to be more receptive to whatever they find. It's going to be a little bit roguelike. Obviously, some people are just going to be on trade and they're going to buy exactly the Merc that they want. But I think a lot of people will see it as like a roguelike and they have like their templates. And it's like, oh, I found this guy with really good supports, and now I'm going to build around him until I find this guy, and then I have the new template for the other Merc, right? So that's going to be exciting. I don't know if I'm going to be participating, but we'll see. Luminary seems like this kind of thing where either you're only Luminary and you like really go into it, or you just don't bother because you don't want to be mid Luminary, right? The other thing I was going to say that I hate about League Start casters right now is the Elementalist meta. I despise it. The fact that your mana gets fixed by only Lightning Golem, and if you didn't have Lightning Golem, like imagine right now if you did not have Lightning Golem, what would happen to League Star casters? I mean, it is an absolute like.
There's like Inquis EB, that's like a decent option.
There is EB Mom. You can also EB Mom. You can even go on Assassin. You almost have to, but it is disgusting. I hate it. I absolutely hate it. And the mana efficiency changes do not help. I will say that mana efficiency... Sorry, yeah?
Yeah, I have a really funny story. My friend started Elementalist Winter Orb. He get all the power charge gear set up, switched to Occultist Winter Orb, and he's like, I don't know how to solve my mana. And he just got Elementalist Golem Jewels to solve it. I was like, solved, whatever.
That's what you do. It's like the mana cost efficiency doesn't really help because it's nice at the start when you take a little bit because mana cost efficiency is really good up to like 100% or so. But so the way mana cost efficiency works for people who don't know, it's like in period 2, you get 100% and your cost is in half. Whereas if you get 100% reduced mana, your cost is 0. But it was almost impossible, so it was balanced around that fact. But if you go from 100 mana cost efficiency to 200, it goes from 50% reduced to 33, right? Like the diminishing returns are like rough. So you don't really want to stack a lot of it. It doesn't work well with inspiration. I don't know if it's bugged with minus mana right now. I have no idea.
They fixed it.
Yeah. Oh, they did fix it? Okay, that's good.
Yeah, it didn't work at Leakstar because it applied like before the efficiency, but now it applies after, so it's fine.
Okay, that's a good thing, yeah. But in general, that doesn't help. And then what I hate the most... Okay, this might be a little bit too much, but I know that GGG thinks solving mana is fun, but what I hate about solving mana is that you are disincentivized to make your build fun, meaning skill cost speed. You're disincentivized to make your caster fun, and I don't know how you solve that. I don't know how you make that interesting, but I don't want to be forced into spell echo on every build just to fix my mana a little bit more, and because the repeat doesn't cost mana, and B, I don't want to be disincentivized to go hyper cast speed builds, because that is the way to make self-cast fun in an endgame. And having to think about how to cheese mana on every build, it's just not fun. So I don't know how they fix that. I don't know if I'm wrong on that, but it's just, yeah.
I was kind of upset that their solution to making Lightning unique was increasing the mana cost. Like, who asked for that? Like, I think it would be fine if Lightning was higher mana cost, but they should have reduced the mana cost of every other spell, because it's already too high, I feel like, if you don't play like full mana stacking. It's impossible to like sustain. If you scale gem levels, it's so impossible to sustain your mana cost.
Yeah,
the thing is, they bundled it. They bundled the mana like with the cast speed as well. So it's actually like they basically doubled down on that thing, right? Like I feel like they could have just done the cast speed, and it's like you already have to actually factor in the change to mana cost, from reduced to efficiency. So that was already going to be a huge change to begin with, just with the higher casts on those skills. So that was kind of a weird change to bundle those things together. It feels like they probably went a little bit overboard there, whereas what they should have done is maybe done the cast speed thing first, and then if they still think they need to, change mana cost a bit, maybe then add it in the next patch. But yeah. The last thing I was going to say about League Start meta is I want to test out Cast and Crit on Assassin. I know it sounds like a meme, but I actually think that with the two crazy nodes now, with like Bifurcate and the Instant Leech Assassin's Mark node, which is both playable on... I mean, you could... People always argue with me. It's like, well, you can do that on a normal spellcast as well. You just have to press a button at every rare. It's like, no, but on Cast and Crit, you just have your Assassin's Mark always up, right? I think that would be really, really fun. You get elusive, so you're also fast, and getting movement speed on your Ascendancy is actually quite rare nowadays. So I think Assassin could be viable. I just have to figure out how not to fall over. And I also hate the fact that I have to path to EB Mom to fix my mana and not have 4K Fizzmax hit. So I don't really know how to solve that whole puzzle yet. But something like Cast on Crit with Soul Rend of Reaping, which now has like 400% damage effectiveness, and you would you don't have to even take Leech because it has built-in Leech, would be quite interesting as well.
Don't quote me on this, but last time I checked, the Assassin node was bugged and it worked with spells, the Assassin Mark 1, which is honestly how it should have worked in the first place. Yeah, like I don't understand why. Like we already have Mark on hit. Why is Assassin only attacks? Like it would actually be cool if it worked with spells. Like I feel like
it's
that's
bugged
how it
right
should
now.
be.
It's also bugged apparently that if you apply the mark on a rare and the rare doesn't die, you cannot apply the mark again. So I don't know. Like I'm a little bit hesitant right now because it seems like a buggy mess, and I don't know. I don't want to test for that. Like that spells work with it, and then it doesn't next patch, right? So it's a little bit awkward, but no.
I was thinking of speaking of Cast on Crit, I was looking at like Cast on Crit with Curse on Hit and then proccing Hex Blast. I think that would be pretty decent as well, now that the cooldown is a bit lower. But it might be a little too long cooldown still for Cast on Crit, not sure.
Hex Blast looks really good.
Spellslinger angle, maybe?
Sorry, what did you say?
Yeah, Pac has been playing that, Spellslinger.
Yeah, Pac played a version of this with like double Hex Blast, like one Contradiction, one Havoc or whatever. Yeah. And it looks okay, so I was thinking of putting it on Assassin and seeing how it would turn out.
Was he playing with Cast and Crit or with Spellslinger?
He was playing Spellslinger.
Oh, yeah, that makes a lot more sense, right? Because the lower cooldown doesn't matter then, yeah.
Yeah,
it looks pretty cool. Good. I've watched Pac a little bit of this patch. Hex Blast does look quite good, so that's nice.
I think Ignite Hex Blast in general is like probably the best Ignite skill for League Star. I think it's still being slept on a little bit. Some people are catching on. Sorry?
Contradiction?
Yeah, Contradiction is just like 20% more damage for no reason. But yeah. And then you just transition to Penance Brand later, right? Or whatever you want to play, like Auto Bomber Ignite-ish. Yeah. But again, it's just another Elementalist, just like all the other builds.
Yeah, the Elementalist thing is kind of strange. You just get so much from your first lab, and then it's like, even later on, like the problems that it's solving are just still there for any other Ascendancy. So it's like, I don't know. It's it feels like they just over time, like they changed that note into 1, right? They had originally it was this like 4-pointer bronze, and they made it 1, and it was just ridiculous at the moment they changed that. Then they nerfed it again, and now it's like people kind of accepted that this is how it is now, but it's still so good that you just feel like you have to use it.
I mean, right now the biggest issue is Primordial Bond. Once that is gone, like it's kind of balanced. It's still really strong, but it's kind of balanced. Like,
yeah. I don't know. I guess we'll see what they'll do with that. Yeah, it feels like it's another thing that they probably will change, because usually they balance around like how much something is being played. So that's probably something that they'll look at.
One distinct upside of Ignite is also that you don't have to solve for mana, really. So that's also nice.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true, yeah. So we were discussing patch 330 there, which is going to come presumably, towards the end of this year. It looks like it's going to be an Atlas expansion, which is kind of exciting, because we had this time there for a while where it was like we weren't really getting we used to get an Atlas expansion every 4 leagues. It was always there. And now, we had this kind of string of patches where we didn't really have anything for a while. And then in 3.26, they done like an Atlas expansion, with a lot of the changes there. And now it looks like 4 leagues later, we're going to be getting another one in 330. This is not confirmed, but they did discuss in the interview there that this is a really heavily endgame focused patch. I guess what I want to ask you guys is, what do you really want to? What's like the one thing you really want to see from an endgame patch for Path of Exile at this stage? Because it's like, it feels like we've already discussed loot there, and we know that they plan to change loot and things like that. There's the Scarab things that are going to be changed up. Presumably there'll be new bosses, perhaps. Ventura, what would you like to see in 330?
This isn't really not specific answer, but just like new ways to play the game. And I can't really tell you what they would be, and I feel like they do always come with a new Atlas expansion. But just something that gets us out of the monotony, because in general, I kind of wish GGG would take bigger risks with like both skill balance and Scarab balance and drop balance and like all of that. It's just like they have this issue where community doesn't really take nerfs well, so they have it difficult. It's definitely a fault at both sides, but you look at stuff like the Holy Hammer, I don't even know what it is called, and you're like, why couldn't this skill just do 50% more damage? It wouldn't even have been played at 50% more. I think at some point they became too scared to intentionally make stuff strong on release and then tone it down if they have to. So I would kind of love to see them go back to it, because that's kind of how it used to be. I feel like nowadays if something is really strong, it's like an oversight, at least most of the time. But back in the day, most of the new stuff was just strong on release, and then it got toned down. So I guess that's what I would like to see for 330. How will you, Poster?
I would really love, I was thinking about this a lot leading up to the podcast. I would really love for there to be meta progression in endgame with farming. And I know, like, technically the Atlas passive tree is that, right? You work up to it, but we've gotten so efficient, and now with the leveling changes and everything, the game is in a pretty easy state in terms of progression, I would say, as easy as it was in a while, that it doesn't really feel like that anymore. And I've never finished like everything as fast as this league and last league. It's gotten to the point where I kind of wish, and I want to be careful here. I don't want idols from Freesia, just to be clear. I don't think it would be a good system, and I hate idols because usually when you have idols, there's no Atlas tree, which I like the Atlas tree. But maybe something like a jewel form, right? Like have jewels on the Atlas passive tree. That's what I mean with progression. Something that you can itemize and that you can upgrade over time, but not in a way that, I need to pay 100 divines to even be able to play something. Just like min-maxing, like something a little bit more interesting, and not just, I have my Atlas set up, and now, I do this strat, I buy these scarabs, done. I buy these scarabs, done. Something in between where you have to think a little bit more, like one extra plane.
Like the only mechanic we have this for is like Sanctum, right? Pretty much.
Yeah, exactly.
And it feels pretty good there. Like you buy like your basic set of relics, and then like you upgrade it over time as you farm. It does feel good. So I think it is a good idea what you're saying.
That'd be interesting for sure. Yeah, some kind of, what about you, of meta progression? Yeah, for me, I think it's got to be like a really good Pinnacle boss. I feel like the last set of Pinnacle bosses kind of missed the mark for me. They didn't feel like the old ones. The best Pinnacle boss I think they've ever made is Maven, and I don't think anything has ever really quite reached that peak. Exarch and Eta were interesting ones because they came together. So it was like this. That patch it was kind of the Atlas tree took center focus on that because it was this huge rework, and the Atlas tree was just this incredible addition to the game. I think the bosses took more of a backseat, and they're just not as good as the Maven. Like, just generally speaking, the mechanics are not quite as interesting and things like this. So, I'd love to see, even if it's just one boss, by the way, because I know that they've been doing this thing where they add like, it's got to be like there's 4 bosses coming in this patch, there's 3 bosses. Like, I think I would like to see just one really good boss, like one that's just they've gone to town with it, right? Like the Maven. Like, I want to see something like that that's just upping the ante big time. So like a really, really good Pinnacle boss. Whether it comes with an Uber version or whatever it is doesn't really matter. That can come later. But yeah, that's what I want to see. They've made great bosses in the past, so they're definitely capable of this. So that's what I'd like to see.
They definitely have like some really good, but like I'm just remembering back to my favorite boss is not my favorite boss actually Uber Elder. I think Uber Elder is one of the best fights. Period. It's just so good, so well made, so balanced. It feels fair but also harsh. It's just such a good fight, and I just remember doing that for the first time. So I also remember doing Cyrus for the first time and hating my life. So maybe not that one.
I actually feel like most of the old bosses are pretty well done. Like, even Shaper is a good boss. Obviously, it's outdated and like it's easy by today's standards, but like at the time, it was a really good boss. And then Uber Elder, Maven, obviously amazing bosses. I actually really like Exarch, unless you have to play with minions or something. Then obviously it feels ass. And then Eater is like okay-ish at best. I don't know, of the new bosses, I feel like only Dread is memorable. The other two, I don't even know what they're called. Like I kill them sometimes, but like I don't remember their name anymore.
I don't know what they do.
They don't even drop anything, so they definitely feel a bit disappointing. But I do think GGG is good at making bosses, and I have to say it is difficult to make bosses fun and challenging for softcore trade though. Like ever since I started playing softcore trade a lot more, I noticed myself shifting away from bosses because it feels difficult to make the bosses challenging past certain gear level, which they're not really supposed to be, but it's just like I get to the gear level where I trivialize bosses too fast. So after like few days, I generally lose interest in bosses.
Yeah.
But I hope they can bring it back. Maybe the boss could be just harder than Grand Ubers. It's fine. Like, not everyone has to be able to do everything, right?
Yeah, I think that was the thing. Like, when they added the incarnations, like the original implementation of them, they were really, really easy to the point where you could basically just get hit by almost all of their mechanics and it wouldn't really do anything to you. Obviously, they added the Uber versions and they did go in and change some things there, and there are a few dangerous abilities there, but even looking back, like you're talking about some of the older bosses, like Azeri, in my opinion, like that's actually a really good boss. If you get rid of like the annoying phases, like the minion phase thing, that's a really cool boss. Like Flame Blast, double Flame Blast, genuinely scary. Like the Storm Ghouls, genuinely scary. I think that being in the Feared was actually really good. I was kind of disappointed they removed it from the Feared because I think it was one of the one boss in the Feared that actually you were really genuinely scared of, and you were like, okay, I need to watch out for that.
It's kind of forgotten now.
It's going to get you. Yeah.
It's kind of
really
forgotten.
The new Feared, man. New Feared feels so much worse, especially if you run Awakening Scarab or Valdos. It just feels like you can't move. Like, it's not as bad now that the corridor thing is not happening, but still, like, it just feels there's like way more like teleport stuff going around with both Cortex and Dread, and then there's just like Cirrus going immune every 3 seconds. And I definitely prefer the old Feared compared to the new one. Even though I would say like Feared farming itself probably feels better now overall because it is all like endgame bosses, but it's still like when you run Awakening or Valdos, it feels worse to me, and it's also harder kinda.
Yeah, I think like the Dread boss, just generally speaking, like you can tell that it was very much designed to be fought in that arena, and it doesn't really fit. It kind of reminds me of Cirrus in a way. Like, Cirrus feels like it doesn't go into the Maven arena very well at all. It just does. It's just been kind of dunked in there, and it doesn't feel like the mechanics really work in there. Like, there's just a lot of problems. I just feel like, generally speaking, Azeri was a much better addition to that fight. It was the way the spells were actually used in that fight. It felt like there were only a few places that you could stand, which actually made the fight genuinely interesting. Like, especially watching that fight, like in the Gauntlet and things like that, was so exciting. Like with the Azeri Flame Blast and stuff being dodged. Like I remember the one that Ben was doing. I think it might have been a couple of gauntlets back, where there were so many things in that fight that could kill him, and he just managed to always stand in the exact right position, just to barely survive. So it's just it's a fun fight, and I kind of wish they kept Aziri in there.
Yeah, I feel like they could have just made a new invitation if they wanted to put Sirius and Dread in there, right? And put maybe the other two incarnations or something with them. It's kind of no reason to replace it in Feared, in my opinion, but at the end of the day, like, we will just adjust whatever. But it feels a little shame. I like the old tier more.
Yeah. All right. That about wraps up what we wanted to discuss on this podcast. Ventura, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.
Yeah, and if you're working on any content, let people know where they can find you.
Oh, I mean, I stream on Twitch pretty much daily on Twitch TV Ventura. I will be going on vacation on Saturday, though, so I won't be streaming for a week. Otherwise, I just released my endgame update for the Elementalist Auto Bomber, and when I'm back from the vacation, I'll probably just start my SSF journey.
Awesome, yeah. And I guess you'd be able to find league start testing and stuff for the next patch whenever that does come around. Always enjoy watching your tests for league start. So yeah, thanks for joining us on this episode of the PoE Report, and that's it. We're signing off.